Nothing green in my teeth.
No, your teeth are fine. Riding the wild wave of excitement here inside day 2 of the ZBrush Summit, I have the distinct pleasure of riding the coattails of greatness here with Tom Isaacson. I said that correctly, of course. Yeah, thank you very much. I want to shake your hand. A great presentation on behalf on behalf of Ubisoft. Let me start off by saying something and setting the record straight right away. You know, it was my intention many moons ago to come here to California and prepare myself for a career at Ubisoft. How some plans have changed, and so I wanted you to know that we had that in common. You're originally from Denmark.
Yeah, that's correct.
And let me ask you first, before we get into that, what's your experience been like here? This is your first ZBrush Summit. Let's talk a little bit about the energy that you felt being here, and not only being a presenter, but being around so many other talented artists. How do you feel about this?
To be honest, it was a little intimidating.
There you go.
So many talented artists that I look up to, and I see their work on ArtStation. I'm thinking, I hope to be this good someday. And to be here with these guys, and they're all humble and nice people, it's been a real pleasure. I'm coming next year, whether I get an invitation.
Hey, I like that. So you heard it. Did you hear that loud and clear? He's coming next year, he says. It's a guarantee.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's really sweet. That actually speaks volumes to the kind of cultural experience we're trying to foster here and produce. I'm glad to hear you say that not only you've accepted the challenge of being here as a speaker, but you're already making plans to be here next year is really something special. And we were talking off camera. You never know who's going to be out there. There's a wide selection of people who are outside, who are masters of the craft in their own right, and who are just visiting, and it's an incredible circumstance. You know, really earlier today we had so many friends show up. I mean, Tony Leonard's out there. He's done some stuff for us. You know, hey Tony, hope you're out there listening. And he said he's going to stick around for some drink. Paul's yelling in the background. But I think that's the kind of thing that's very special. You have an opportunity to interact with people who you may not otherwise have a chance to do so with.
Yeah.
How have you just go ahead?
Well, it's because this is sort of a safe place as well for artists, I feel.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, I don't know, I can only speak for myself, but slightly introvert, maybe a little bit shy. So this is, it feels like a good space to be able to talk and communicate, and we all speak the same language, ZBrush.
Yeah, and there's no egos here as well. And the other thing is, speaking of space, we're very fortunate to be here in the hallowed grounds of the Noman School of Visual Effects, which has served as the foundational underpinning for so many people's learning and so many people's paths across the industry. So there's a real strong fabric,
It's an impressive space. Right?
Yeah, and look around us. We have all these wonderful resources and, just a great environment. Let's talk a little bit now about your sort of personal life. You're originally from Denmark.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's an incredible place with a tremendous reputation, both in the areas of academia. Socially speaking, the social structure of Denmark is always ranked among the highest in the world, and also very sound economics. I don't want to get into economics, but how can you describe your life in Denmark?
Denmark is a great place, and I'm saying this living abroad, but I think Denmark it gave me the safety to follow my dreams, I guess, do what I wanted. It was, for me, I don't miss Denmark as a place. I don't have a need to go back there all the time.
You're not nostalgic
but it's part of me. It's part of who I am, and I think it was just incredibly useful place. I have still many good friends there, and it's a nice little safe space where I can always come back, always welcome.
In what ways would you say that your Danish upbringing, your Danish experience informs some of your designs, perhaps? Does it have an influence on you? Is it, you're known to be very pragmatic people?
I think organization comes in.
That's absolutely true, right?
It's almost to a slightly haunting degree, where it can become a little bit too much.
Yeah,
I like to control and make sure everything is very square.
Okay, I like that, yeah.
Maybe it's not a good artist approach, but it's definitely good in an organization where you have many artists working together, trying to create a project and stuff like this. That's where I actually think my Danish upbringing is very useful.
Yeah, the fabric of who you are as a person is actually quite useful for the company.
Yeah.
Knowing that Ubisoft is a company with an international sort of reach, with an international group of artists working, across many offices using proprietary softwares. For instance, a lot of times we don't talk about these things, but I think that it's very important at this particular junction to bring that up, to say that there are proprietary elements to the pipeline that get passed around and that are done internally that demand sort of an attention to detail that is fortuitously for you, a part of who you are. So, yeah, that's incredible. I appreciate that. Hey, so listen, there's you and I also have the distinction of holding master's degrees. I recently just finished mine from the University of Southern California, and you have a master's degree in computer animation from the NCCA Bournemouth University.
Yeah, Bournemouth University in the UK.
How did that come about? What prompted you to pursue further education and higher level learning?
Well, actually, from a kid, I always was into artwork, but never encouraged. You say, like people say,
same
like,
here. I mean,
it was like it was always in the cards that I would do, some regular, hard-earning, good job. I was looking to be a military man or something in education, but never really focused anything on art. It wasn't until I was actually all grown up and decided to quit my job and pursue artwork. And there was just a new school in Denmark that had opened, the first one that was a public school that actually dealt with computer graphics, which had just been a hobby of mine.
Right.
I think I started dabbling with the 3D Studio back in '93 with the Studio 4 version,
wow, man.
DOS, and so I've been messing around with this as a hobby.
He's a patient guy. Yes, he's definitely Danish.
And so, fast forward a few years, and then I find out, okay, there's actually a school now that I can go and try this out, see if it's for me. So I quit my job and moved across the country to try this school, and 3D was actually for me. It's something I really enjoy, and but it was limited. It was a new school with little experience. For the most part, I already knew everything that was worth learning from this school. So I decided I tried to look abroad, and I found actually a friend of mine sent me a link. Hey, you should try this school, and they did a master's course. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to try and apply for that
Good
one.
idea.
Didn't really think it through. Didn't realize I didn't have a bachelor degree to go with it. But luckily, this school really liked to have people that was academically trained and some with different backgrounds to come in. And it was only, I think there was room for 40 students on the course.
Yeah, people don't really bring that up either, that a master's degree program is quite exclusive in some cases.
It was pretty small.
Yeah.
So I applied, and then I had a phone interview. I had to send them in my reel. And then based on that, I was chosen, luckily, to attend the school, and that's how I ended up
that's fantastic.
a year later with a master's degree.
Isn't that something? So
animation.
what job were you doing before you decided to pursue that?
I was a firefighter for a couple of years.
Look at this.
Yeah.
We learn these things about these people. This is my favorite part of my job here with Pixelogic at the ZBrush Summit, is that I get to. You were a firefighter for many years.
For 2 years.
For 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were a civil servant helping people. This is incredible. What a nice thing to tell us.
I still miss it to this day, but
Well, you're still fit, man. I mean, the camera's adding 10 pounds, but he's making me look like a little guy. And I'm also a little guy, but this guy, he's in good shape, good form. So the other thing to keep in mind is that you've touched upon something that's very much the underlying running theme. I was just having this conversation with Jaime, that you were willing to walk away from yourself in order to become a new self and reach further than what you were doing. Yeah. And I think that this has been something that people have been talking about across the board here at this year's ZBrush Summit, is that you have to be willing to maybe perhaps step out of your zone of comfort or go beyond yourself in some ways. How do you feel about that? Is that accurate?
I believe it's strong-heartedly, actually. I think the amount of time you need to invest, at least for me, I mean, I'm not born with an incredible talent or anything. I just put hours into it, try and just keep doing it.
Perspiration.
Yeah, just keep doing it until I think it's good, and then, then do more, because it has to be better.
That's right.
And so I think you can't really do too many things. You need to focus. I think it's a good thing if you start early to try a little bit of everything, but once you find out what your passion is, that's where you have to put your energy. So at least for me, I mean, and that's another thing, like growing up in Denmark, it's a little safe to do this jump. It's not as dangerous as countries with less social security and stuff like that. So
that's a good point, actually.
That's a good benefit. I mean, in Denmark, this was easy. Even going to the UK to study, it was partly funded by Denmark, in fact.
That's fantastic.
I still had to pay a good chunk out of my own pocket, but
of course.
But so with that safety net, it's a bit easier. So easy for me to say, maybe.
Well, no, I think that it speaks volumes to what we were talking about earlier. That there's just a very different dynamic when looking at places like Denmark, for instance, Scandinavian countries for the most part. are always highly ranked. Sweden, Finland, Norway, these places are always highly ranked in that regard, and it's.
But
it's
you
nice
also
hear
have to
that.
be ready to leave those safe places
Of course.
to get that career.
Yeah, and I think that's also coming full circle. In some ways, there's some conversations about retaining youth and retaining talent in those places, because there is that propensity for people to say, well, it was nice of my country to facilitate this learning for me, but New York City's calling, and I'll see everybody later. I'm off to Merrill Lynch. Thanks very much. So there is that. Let's move along here. This is fantastic. And again, it's a pleasure to speak with you about these things. Getting intimate and interactive here with Louie Tucci. So you're lead animator, tech director, and lead character artist working on, it's safe to say, some incredible titles. Ghost Recon, the Hitman series. By the way, Hitman series, great stuff. Great stuff. How do you manage such a diverse series of roles across the production pipeline? Like, how does that
well, I started out as an animator, right?
Right.
But I always had a passion for characters.
Okay.
I guess they're pretty
Yeah,
interchangeable. So I guess the character part is self-taught. Something I was just going to do in my free time whenever I got home from the office, animating. Go home and create characters. I don't know, follow my passion, I guess. And keep doing it. I've made a few games by now. I mean, some of them takes 5 years to do. So
yeah, some of them are pretty good, right? I mean, you would say, persistence. Some of them are pretty good. Let's talk about these games. First of all, I could jump around a bit here, but I think I'm going to do this. Kane and Lynch.
Yeah.
Let me be honest. I played the heck. I have to say heck. It's his family show. I played the heck out of that game, and that game broke some serious boundaries for me, considering where in-game transitions and the mature themes were concerned. Mm-hmm. I think you guys did a stellar job of really creating a sort of tension, character-wise. There's this one. I think the game is actually ranked as one of my favorites of all time. There was this je ne sais quoi about it. There's a scene where, in particular, I'm recalling where you are being tortured and find yourself running through the streets naked in the rain. I think it's Kane and Lynch Dog Days 2, right? It's Dog. But that is an extension of part 1 as well. Like, there's this theme.
Yeah. Well, the most of the props goes out to the full character teams on those projects. My main involvement in these projects were establishing the pipeline.
Okay.
So,
well, yeah, I mean, it speaks volumes.
So it was more the technical side of it. That's where the TD part comes in.
Yeah.
Making sure that these guys had the tools and the processes to create the characters that they really wanted. So I was just assisting because this was between Hitman Blood Money and Hitman Absolution that was sort of my main
project.
That's
kind of bookending your main
exactly.
projects,
So
right?
I was this whole time I was developing a pipeline for Hitman Absolution to make sure we could do that game the way we wanted to. So I was helping those guys. We were all in the same office,
of course.
Right? So.
And there's a lot of overlap, of course, in that regard. So that also never gets really talked about, the overlap that happens in that case. You would be, you're finding solutions to problems, I would say, on the fly with one group or one team, and then at the same time implementing those positive aspects in the other vein when working on the other project. That's a fantastic situation to be a part of. I think it's really poignant. Let's go back for a second. You were saying that earlier off camera, you've been working since since ZBrush 1.
Yeah.
Like,
it got serious with 1.5.
Yeah, can we? Yeah. He's been using ZBrush. I don't know if Paul's still listening to this out there. Paul, you better be listening. This guy's been using ZBrush since ZBrush 1. It's safe to say that a lot has changed. How has your workflow adapted for every point update across?
Yeah, I touched a little bit upon it earlier, but to be honest, I mean, you heard this 100 times. Probably us old dogs, with ZBrush, we tend to stick with the same tools.
Yeah, that's fair.
I actually now with the new version
4.8, yeah,
4.8,
holy smoke, here we go.
Because I had a segment to talk about our high poly.
Yeah. That's why I'm asking you.
Our hard surface process, for example, and stuff like that, and it changes, right? And with new versions, new workflows, but there are certain basic tools. Like my whole presentation before still uses that red madcap standard default material.
You weren't alone today, by the way. I want to draw attention. I'm not calling anybody out on this one, but there was someone else who was making some guns.
Yeah.
You know who you are. You're using the red wax.
I was happy to see that.
Yeah, I was too.
Some of the other guys were kind of making fun of me because I was using this, and I don't know.
This is the first thing I say in the class. I say, Listen, everybody, go ahead and tap on the material tab, okay? And go ahead and deselect that by selecting that. See that basic material? Click on the basic material because Mr. Tucci doesn't want to look at that red wax anymore.
Yeah. I get it, but from, you know, that's one of those things. I just understand it.
Yeah,
I can read it. You know, I know exactly what I'm dealing with. I do change, of course I do. You know,
goes with
but
that.
I go back.
Yeah, there are these nice moments of sort of you know. History associated with our usership, and I think that's one of those things where you're like, I mess around with Paul from time to time in the office all those years using a mouse, and he's like, why are you using a mouse? I say, man, I'm using a mouse. It works perfectly fine for me. So I've been guilty of using a mouse. This is, you know, what can we say? I have to come back to this educational content though. I noticed that you have a series of tutorials that you offer by way of your blog. Let me just make sure that everybody has this. You can see Tom's blog at characterinc.com. That's characterinc.com, all one word, characterinc.com. Tell us about your series of tutorials and go ahead.
Yeah, well, this was actually, most of the tutorials I wrote was when I did a freelance bit where I you know, needed change the scenery, so I went freelance for a while. So this was kind of to help me, first of all, get an audience, of course, make myself known. But also, I love teaching. I think it's really useful. And one of the most fun things about writing a tutorial or teaching is that you are really forced to think about why you press that button.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know what it really does.
In a larger context is the real issue.
So it's really nice. And I also felt like a lot of tutorials out there weren't that helpful or even wrong sometimes. So at least I wanted to do my bit to help improve that a little bit. Admittedly, it's been a little while since I started at Ubisoft. I haven't been writing that many tutorials.
We'll excuse that kind of behavior, sir. We'll excuse that.
But I think it's very educational and it's really fun. I've done a few for 3D Total and stuff like that. Usually, when I release a new my new artworks, personal artworks, I get requests to write a tutorial about how it was done.
You went about the process.
Yeah, and I occasionally do that as well. It's fun to share.
Speaking of process, how would you say, because I was just having this discussion right before we got into this interview, we were talking about how the process needs to be re-examined at this particular point because of the tool sets.
Everything changes.
I really stand behind that. I would say that often on the record, regardless of my affiliation to this at this particular point, but strictly as an educator at a high level, I would say that it needs to be reframed. It needs to be looked at in a very seriously different way because there are certain processes in place now inside of ZBrush that allow you to really artistically work towards creating an asset and really not considering any of the technical hurdles that were there before. There's stuff like the Z-modeler functionality. I'm sure you're making great use of that at this point, right? And the back and forth between that and any CAD application is something that cannot be denied. I mean, it's arguable at this point that the asset could be produced just from a structural standpoint, from start to almost finish inside of ZBrush.
Yeah.
And if we're not acknowledging that, I think we're doing ourselves as educators a disservice. For me, as an educator at sort of at the university level, that's what I stand behind. I have to look at things in a very broad way. Would you agree with me in that regard in some way?
I think it's super good to have everything within the same tool set. Creates that unity. I think it's working in a place like Ubisoft, we use all the softwares.
Yeah, of
right?
course. And I'm not a mono software guy. I'm using all kinds of different things.
Between us, we don't even care. Like on the same project, you can just use whatever you want. It's very artist temperamental. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure if that answers the question.
No, it's specific to the individual needs of the artist, I think, is what you're trying to get at. And I think that I would agree with you. I would say, if you're comfortable making a base mesh in one way, let's say, for a production pipeline, then that's totally cool. But I think that the functionality of things like the Z-modeler right now, right, and the dexterity of that, those features that are embedded inside of that tool set, as we've seen, are definitely in alignment with a production professional pipeline. So
it's one of those things. I try to force myself because I know. I mean, sometimes you're an old dog, new tricks, and all this kind of stuff, right?
That's why I'm bringing it up. Right, you have so much experience.
And I do this every now and again when there's a new software that I feel like, okay, this could be something interesting, I will buy it for myself at home and do a personal project that involves this, just to teach myself. So I always, if I do personal projects, I always try to do something I have no idea how to do, and then use that to teach myself those skills that I need. And then I bring it to work and say, hey guys, maybe we need to revise our pipeline because this and this new, it could be just something new feature or a whole new software. So wherever it takes us, really.
It's oftentimes been thought of as a very lonely pursuit to be involved in computer graphics. You know, we have this picture of the guy or the gal sitting behind a thing, you know, some kind of strange kind of creature, you know, sitting behind this monitor. But I think that now that I'm involved in educating people in this regard, you know, from all the way from middle schools to university students, I'm finding that what you said is actually extremely accurate, is that the feedback that people give you, the time you spend trying to figure out why and what context a feature is being used or your process is going in a certain direction is extremely valuable, but also informed by your collaborators.
Yeah.
So that, you see that in a professional sphere, I'm sure. Describe that to us. How does the influence of your very talented men and women who work with you, how does that shape who you are?
Well, sometimes it's just really good to see other people do it the same way that you're doing it, even if
oh yeah,
an
affirmation, high five, I'll take affirmation all day long, man. Are you kidding me? Hey, they're doing it like I'm doing it, cool.
Yeah, then you know you're
not crazy.
doing it completely wrong. And this even applies to big projects like the game we've just been doing, Ghost Recon Wildlands, and is you know, we were trying. I mean, none of us had real experience doing a game just that particular way with all customization and stuff like that. I mean, I'd done it a bit on the Hitman games, but not to this level.
Right.
So we were just like, okay, how do we do this? We don't know.
Going
and then you try and go ahead, and now I hope, like, having shown it tonight, maybe some people will say, okay, that's actually good, or maybe they'll be like, what? That's insane. Why did you do it this way? At least hoping to get some kind of feedback.
I think it's very positive. There's been a few workflows that I've seen also that I will implement going forward. That say, wait a minute,
I learned so much just from these last couple of days.
Like a master academy across 3 days. Today's only day 2, by the way. I wanted to bring that up. Let me. We're going to try to wind this down here. I know they're going to be coming in here any minute. I can feel it. I'm looking at my clock.
All right.
We have to talk about you've migrated since to France. You're living in France.
Yep.
You're at the Ubisoft office in France. Describe your French experience. How are you liking living in the French Quarter?
It's different. There's a language barrier,
of course,
for sure. But luckily, you know, we're all computer nerds, and to some extent, we speak the same language across nationalities. It's we all know what's, even if the words are not exactly the same, we can still understand each other. And Paris is great. So
you're actually living in Paris. Let's frame this for everybody watching. This guy lives in Paris. I mean, Dom is, you know, he's walking around croissants and espressos in the morning.
Yeah.
I imagine this.
Oh,
I'm vicariously living through you at this point.
Just you know, a little bakery across the street.
Dark-haired women with dark sunglasses and large hats sitting at little tables.
Little cafes.
Yeah, with stiletto shoes or little. Oh my goodness, it's a fantasy going wild here.
Yeah, I enjoyed immensely, and the team I worked with on Ghost Recon Wildlands was all a very senior team. Most of them had already worked on at least one Ghost Recon
the quality is
before.
very high.
So, great learning experience. I mean, I only thought I would be there for a year or two, maybe, and now I'm going on 5. So, I guess.
Funny how things turn out that way, isn't that amazing? We've got a couple of things going on coming up here today. I don't know if you know this, but when we wrap here from the studio, tonight is the night, if you're watching at home and around the world, the ZBrush Awards are being presented fresh off the foothills of our interview here. You and I are going to migrate our way into the main stage, find our way through the regalia, and we're going to be witnessing another sort of cavalcade, a high watermark for the ZBrush world. There's going to be some very special things happening tonight. There's also an after party. Excited about getting to finally intermingle with some people who have been in the audience and who are also high-level professionals.
I mean, I've met some people, but there's so many out there, and I can't wait to meet them all.
Yeah, I could go on for days throwing shout-outs and such things to people in the audience. There's a talent pool that is very deep. Again, I want to draw attention to the fact that you know, for the people who are here, be sure to check out the sponsors outside, the folks from Noman who are helping to keep things together here, all of the Pixelogic volunteers in the background who have made day 2 an extraordinary experience for myself and for yourself as well. Again, I think I want to thank you Tom Isaacson.
Isaacson. Yeah.
Isaacson. Tom Isaacson.
Isaacson. Yeah.
Isaacson. I can get this correct. I can work on this. I want to
no
thank you
worries.
for sitting with me this afternoon, or
my
late. Now
pleasure.
we're late into the evening. I didn't even realize what time it is. We're in the evening here, and the night has fallen, I believe, in the background here in Hollywood. And you and I are going to go and find out what the what is when it comes to these ZBrush awards.
Awesome.
On behalf of myself, Louie Tucci, and the entire Pixelogic team, I want to thank you for making the trek all the way from Europe to come.
It was my pleasure. Thanks
Yeah,
for the
it's a pleasure for having you. And any last words to the people at home and the team at Ubisoft in France?
Well, I would love to say, I mean, I missed it out there, to say thanks to the team back home. Doing this character stuff, I wouldn't have done it without a big foundation of these strong guys that just knew what they were doing, just trying to keep up. So see you back home.
Okay, there you go. So teamwork is the name of the game, and pushing yourself beyond the limits has been the theme for this past couple of days here at the ZBrush Summit. Again, we're going to take it back to you, Paul, in the green screen hangar. We'll catch everybody at the awards. Hey, listen, I want to thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it, and it's really a nice thing.